Nirmala Sitharaman there, the finance minister, concluding presentation of the budget. The parliament has accepted it. She, of course, holds the record for the longest budget speech, 2 hours, 45 minutes or so. I think this has to be the shortest. It was less than an hour. This, of course, is an interim budget. Everyone had been saying, don't expect much. This is just a temporary budget till a full-scale budget is announced, is presented by the new government. Nirmala Sitharaman today on the floor of the House was very confident of her government, and she said our government presenting the full union budget in July. So the BJP government fairly confident they are coming back to power, and by the looks of it, that is what it is going to be. So for the moment, this interim budget will take care of the time up till the elections are over and the new government is sworn in. Now, traditionally, what happens is this. Nirmala Sitharaman will do an interview with Doordarshan explaining the budget, explaining the interim budget, and then we expect the Prime Minister to speak. He usually speaks in Hindi to explain the budget. But for you and me, what is the big takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, for the salaried class? For the salaried class, this is the big takeaway. There is no change in income tax slabs. If there was an expectation that from 30%, the maximum tax on income tax is 30%, if that 30% would come down to 25%, that has not happened. However, Nirmala Sitharaman has thanked income taxpayers for their patronage and their money. She says, don't worry, the money that you give us via taxes is being wisely used, and it is being used to develop the country. Some very interesting points in the budget. Apart from a bit of a heartbreak for India's middle class, there have been some interesting takeaways as well. For one, there is all the talk on the Solar Alliance, on solar energy, how 1 crore houses will be lit up with solar energy, which will have a saving of 16,000 to 18,000 rupees for every household. So that is interesting. Another announcement being made is for the middle class, housing for the middle class. So the government has said that those living in rented houses or slums, they will be encouraged / incentivized to buy or build their own houses. Very interesting. For anyone who's the parent of a young girl, this is something that you need to know. The government is saying we are going to encourage cervical cancer vaccination for young girls across the country between the ages of 9 to 14. So is this vaccination going to be free? Will it be subsidized? Those are not details that have been forthcoming, but I do think this is a very important issue that the government has touched upon. The government has said the next 5 years are going to be years of unprecedented growth. So India needs to be ready for it. Before I go to my guest, I also want to quickly tell you that Lakshadweep, which has been much in the news, has found a special mention in the budget. The government has said that apart from other islands in the country, Lakshadweep will be developed into a prime tourist spot. Madhavan Narayan, I believe you're with us. First reactions. Okay, I believe not through with us. Actually, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. We all expected this speech to be a bit longer, given Nirmala Sitharaman's history. That hasn't happened. And therefore, let's quickly then listen in to the key highlights of her speech. Just to tell you that what the government is also announcing is 517 new Udan routes. So this is good. This means better connectivity for you and me. This is one major announcement. Also, something that the finance minister has said, that the biggest capex ever has been announced right now, 11.1 lakh crore rupees for the year 2025. The Prime Minister there looking solemn. He's getting into an election year. He's actually already into election mode. The finance minister looking a bit tired. The days leading up to the budget presentation, as you can expect, are tiring, given the fact that this is the biggest day for the finance ministry. And then probably Nirmala Sitharaman will be the one presenting another budget, a full-scale budget in July, like she said. Let's quickly listen in to the highlights so far of Nirmala Sitharaman's speech, and then we'll quickly start getting you reactions from across sectors.
Tourism, including spiritual tourism, has tremendous opportunities for local entrepreneurship. To take up comprehensive development of iconic tourist centers, branding and marketing them at global scale. A framework for rating of the centers based on quality of facilities and services will be established. Long-term interest-free loans will be provided to states for financing such development on matching basis. To address the emerging fervor for domestic tourism, Honorable Speaker, sir, projects for port connectivity, tourism infrastructure, and amenities will be taken up on our islands, including Lakshadweep. The Skill India mission has trained 1.4 crore youth, upskilled and reskilled 54 lakh youth, and established 3,000 new ITIs. A large number of institutions of higher learning, namely 7 IITs, 16 triple ITs, 7 IIMs, 15 AIMS, and 390 universities have been set up.
Okay, let me get a first reaction from Dr. Vandana Singh, Director Global Corporate Key, and Gaurav Kumar is founder and CEO of Kasha. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Dr. Vandana Singh, let me start with you. Thank you for your time. I know it's a little unfair for TV broadcasters to ask specialists to react so quickly to something that has been announced, just about announced. But I'm going to start with income tax because that is something that was top of mind for every middle-class citizen in this country, including you, I'm sure. So no changes in income tax slabs. Was that something expected? I mean, the finance minister is saying, thank you for the money. You're doing great for Bharat. And your money is being used wisely. All those are good words to hear, but it would have been better to hear that there has been some tinkering with slabs as well.
Yes, you're right, Shreya. We can all say that. But at the same time, I think the finance minister has been very realistic. And when she says that, look at where we were then and where we are now, I think she's giving a very realistic viewpoint. India at this point of time is marching ahead on all fronts. And I do believe that each one of us has our role to play as a taxpayer. And of course, we would have wanted some relief. But maybe as we move forward and move into the future, that it gets better for us. I would still like to be cautiously optimistic about it.
So how would you rate this budget? I mean, I understand this is an interim budget. We shouldn't have expected too much. But is that what it is? Conservative, simply a vote on account with no really big highlights or headlines?
I would say it has been just to the point and realistic. I especially saw the part for women, women development, for youth, the coming up of medical colleges, what was spoken for the aviation sector, since I'm an aviation specialist. I do believe there is more to do. I mean, where we are the largest, most populous country in the world, we are still the third largest in terms of domestic aviation. Next, after only United States and China, why can't we be number one? And for that, we are talking of injecting, of course, 1,000 new aircrafts, 517 new routes. But then you do need an increase of 15 to 20% in the budget, which I suppose was not shown now in the interim budget. But I do hope that something like that comes, because we are talking about reforms. We are talking about moving ahead. We are talking about being the global hub for tourism. We are talking about spiritual tourism. But then where is that money going to come from? And this is where I like to say that, look, this is realistic, very cautious, but I think we need to get bolder, and we need to come out with more, walk the talk. So we need to see that increase in the budget if we want to see this increase happening and step up our pace if I may say so.
So, do you see that happening in July when the full union budget is presented? I think more or less, most people are convinced that it is this government that is going to be presenting the next budget as well. Do you see that happening for the aviation sector in the next budget? Given the emphasis that has been laid in this interim budget on tourism, for example, it's not just spiritual tourism. They're even talking about developing islands. Say, for example, Lakshadweep. Lakshadweep, of course, for obvious reasons, got a special mention. But there was something in the interim budget for tourism which is directly linked to aviation.
Yes, you're right. So if as I said, that I am cautiously optimistic, and I would like to believe that come July, and if it's the same government, which seems like it, then I do suppose that yes, this walk the talk will happen. Meaning, the tourism, the spiritual tourism, the increase of airports from 74 to 149. And the aim is 220 airports by 2025 end. This should happen, in my view. And there is a lot of emphasis on this, as well as air cargo as well. She spoke about the air cargo. She spoke about the corridors, the three main corridors for the railways, the upcoming of metros, the green energy. I think all the points have been really nicely covered. And I do see it happening in July. But the question is, would that much step in pace happen? Would that increase in budget, meaning 15 to 20% increase, we are talking only of the aviation part, will happen? That remains to be seen, and I would like to see that happen, honestly.
Okay, before I toss over to the highlights of the budget, and we'll do that for our viewers who are just about joining us, Dr. Vandana Singh, I want to speak to you about, you spoke about women. And, before we were getting into this budget, the government was telling us this is going to be a Gyan budget. It is going to be for the Garib, it is going to be for the youth, for the Annadata, and for the Nari.
Yes.
For the Nari, of course, the government is saying that our target for Lakpati Didis has gone up from 2 crores to 3 crores, which means women who run these self-help groups, 3 crore of them by the end of this year will be Lakpatis, which is great, which is a feel-good factor for the budget. But I want to talk to you about something that relates to the health of little girls. It relates to the health of all women, actually, cervical cancer, and the vaccine for it that the government is saying that will be encouraged for girls between 9 to 14 years of age. Now, there were no specifics. I was trying to listen in because this is something that I thought would interest everyone. I didn't hear any specifics. But which way do you think is the government likely to move forward? Is this going to be subsidized vaccination, or do you think this is going to be free universal vaccination for all girls between the ages of 9 to 14?
Shreya, even I was looking for the specifics, and the specifics were not there. So, which leaves a little question mark, because this has to come free. This should not even come subsidized. When we are talking about something as important as cervical cancer vaccination for little girls, then I do feel that this should come free, and it has to be mandatory. It has to be compulsory, just the way we said that everybody will have to take Covaxin or Covishield or what was there in the pandemic times. Then right now we have to make this mandatory. Now this specific, even I was waiting for. We were talking about dignity of women. I think more can be done for the dignity of women, but at the same time, a lot is being done for the Nari Shakti. Coming to Nari Shakti, I would say yes.
Okay. Dr.
She's
Vandana,
right. There'll be more Lakpatis, but I wish there could be more than that. And when it comes to Nari Shakti is everywhere, whether there are highest number of women pilots in India, whether it's women joining the forces, whether we are seeing them on the Republic Day parade. I mean, women are there everywhere, but making certain things really mandatory and saying this will be given free, this will be done. This is the need of the hour, really, looking at the size of our country And the female population, if we want them to come up, get educated, they need to be in good health. That comes first. Medical colleges,
Okay.
very good.
Okay, and you know
But
what's
let's prepare them for it.
great? Great. We need more of them. Yeah,
Yes,
and we need more
absolutely.
doctors. We know that. We understand we need more doctors, and therefore we need more medical colleges. When it comes to women, it's great for you to announce all these schemes. It's great for you to say that our target now is 3 crore Lakpati Didis, etc. But what is critical is to get women back into the workforce. Just about 33% women in this country currently in the workforce. You need to get more of them into the workforce. You're talking about a 5 trillion economy. You need women to participate to get to that 5 trillion. Dr. Vandana Singh, can I just request you to stay on with us? Quickly going to play some of the highlights of the budget, and then I'll come right back to you.
Thank you, Shreya.
Over the last 10 years, the direct tax collections have more than trebled and the return filers swelled 2.4 times. I would like to assure the taxpayers that their contributions have been used wisely for the development of the country and welfare of its people. I appreciate the taxpayers for their continued support. The government has reduced and rationalized tax rates. Under the new tax scheme, there is now no tax liability for taxpayers with income up to 7 lakh rupees, up from 2.2 lakh rupees in the financial year 2013-14. The threshold for presumptive taxation for retail businesses was increased from 2 crores to 3 crores. Similarly, the threshold for professionals eligible for presumptive taxation was increased from 50 lakh rupees to 75 lakh rupees. Also, corporate tax rate was decreased from 30% to 22% for existing domestic companies and to 15% for certain new manufacturing companies. Honorable Speaker, sir, in the last 5 years, our focus has been to improve taxpayer services. The age-old jurisdiction-based assessment system was transformed with the introduction of faceless assessment and appeal, thereby imparting greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Introduction of updated income tax returns, a new Form 26AS, and pre-filling of tax returns have made filing of tax returns simpler and easier. As for tax proposals, in keeping with the convention, I do not propose to make any changes relating to taxation and propose to retain the same tax rates for direct and indirect taxes, including import duties. Railways. 3 major railway corridor programs will be implemented. These are energy, mineral, and cement corridor. Number 2, port connectivity corridors. And number 3, high traffic density corridors. The projects have been identified under the PM Gati Shakti for enabling multimodal connectivity. They will improve logistics efficiency and reduce cost. The resultant decongestion of the high traffic corridors will also help in improving operations of passenger trains, resulting in safety and higher travel speed for passengers. Together with dedicated freight corridors, these 3 economic corridor programs will accelerate our GDP growth and reduce logistic costs.
Economist Vijay Sardana is joining us on the broadcast. Thank you very much, Mr. Sardana, for your time here. A quick first reaction?
I think this budget is putting a foundation for better India. The focus is on infrastructure, and they have not made any changes in tax slab to avoid any form of controversies. So I think the focus is on fundamentals. The focus is on how to strengthen the economy and making the overall ecosystem more simplified, better for the investors, and especially for entrepreneurship. So I think this highlight very clearly says that soon before budget, government do not want to create any form of controversy. They just want that status quo on taxation should be maintained, and there should be encouragement for the investors, either startups or MSME or even infrastructure projects.
Mr. Sardana, can I humbly submit that the last thing this government is scared of is controversies? If they wanted to avoid a controversy, the ED would not have arrested Hemant Soren yesterday. So I don't think it is the government avoiding a controversy by not tinkering with the tax slabs or making changes to the income tax slabs. We could have done with it. Look, I understand that in taxes are the earnings, the only earnings of the government, right? If the government needs to spend, they need money from somewhere. That somewhere is the taxes that we pay, direct and indirect. I understand that, but 30% of your of the hard-earned money, that you get into your bank account is going to the government. That 30% could have come down by 25%, and I can assure you there would be no controversy over it. Instead, you would have middle-class citizens like me cheering and saying thank you.
So that's what I'm saying, that they will give it the major budget, but right now, because see, everybody is demanding something. If as a taxpayer I am demanding, the farmer will demand, the small scale industry will demand, the traders will demand, that other communities will demand. So there is always a challenge. My way of looking at is that yes, government of India is very keen to have controversy on political side, because that gives them a mileage. They know it that opposition cannot defend. But they do not want to have controversy with a common man because they are voters. So they don't want to rub them or any of the section of the voting community on the wrong side. As far as political controversies are concerned, Mr. Modi and his government always welcome that because they know they can clean vote them very easily.
Dr. Vandana Singh, do you agree with that? That it was only to avoid a controversy that there was no tinkering with tax slabs? This is my own understanding is Mr. Sardana is being extremely kind to the government.
Was this question to me? Yes.
Yes,
I
Dr.
would
Vandana
say
Singh,
that
go ahead, please.
the government is being very cautious here. And as I said, realistic. I would have loved to see also, where we are being thanked for paying our taxes, that it is coming down by a little bit at least. You said 25%. That would be nice, really, to see that happening. But yes, right now it's really marching on all fronts by the government, and they are just sticking to the way it was, not giving the specifics, but giving the generics. This is the way I look at it right now.
And any good news, I'll ask both of you this, on the fiscal deficit front. They're saying 5.8%, which is fairly decent. 5.8% of the GDP is fairly decent.
I would also agree to that. It's fairly decent, and it's also realistic, again, as I mentioned. You can't, we wouldn't like to, see any other figure. I think that is where 5.5 to 5.8%. Exactly.
Dr. Sardana?
See, I don't think right now we should focus on revenue deficit or budget deficit, because this is a vote on account. And it is, the plan is only for, if I say that 3 months, and after a month or so, we will have, budget announcements, and government cannot do major spending or major announcements in coming days. So this will not make any difference. It is just a notional number. Actual budget, which will come in July, that at that time we will see how much government of India has to borrow from the market, how much they are able to refund, or what plans they have to generate or accrue the resources for the further development agenda. So right now these things are immaterial. Only thing right now I feel I will prefer to read into the budget speech or the document is what they have given a message to the voters, because right now we are moving into the election mode, and how they want to influence that voter and what is the overall plan. All other macroeconomic numbers, I think we have to focus in July, not right now.
Okay, yeah, you know, the stock
I
markets
would,
are usually a barometer of market sentiment, and they're on your screens, Dr. Vandana Singh.
yes, that's true, but I agree with Mr. Sardana right now that we really don't need to look at the numbers. This is the year of the election, and the numbers will speak for themselves only in July. Right now, it's just what it is and what is being shown, and it's also for the voters to see. If there were more specifics
Okay,
in
so
any sector, be it for women, be it for aviation, be it for railways, be it for anything, if there is more uh, specific, then there should have been more, for us to look at. At this point, there isn't much except very generic statements that are there, realistic statements that are there, but the real numbers will come only in July. And I do hope it sticks to
okay, and I think
5.8%. I hope there is no more borrowing that happens. That remains to be seen.
because the last thing you want is your country developing on borrowed money. You don't want that sort of growth. Let me quickly get in some political reactions coming in, and then I want to ask both of you what, according to you, is the political message that has been sent out in an election year by the ruling dispensation. But before that, we'll quickly get in some more reactions.
सरकार की अहंकार दिखती है, निर्वाचन हुआ नहीं है और ये अपने आप को विजेता घोषित कर रहे हैं। जनता जनार्दन है और कोई भी राजनीतिक दल भारत के जनता से अपने आप को बड़ा नहीं समझना चाहिए।
This is a vote on account to keep the government solvent over the first quarter of the next financial year. What is extremely worrying is the increasing fiscal deficit, because the numbers which have been presented by the finance minister clearly demonstrate that over 18 lakh crores is the unfunded extent of the union budget for this year. And this number is only going to increase over the next year. If you leave that aside for a moment, the rest of the budget speech was mere grandstanding. It was like driving, looking into the rear view mirror rather than looking ahead. So therefore, the finance minister spent all her time in extolling her own track record, which obviously is questionable, and trying to run down what had happened 10 years back. We will reply to it in great detail when the debate on the budget takes place.
Well, it was one of the shortest speeches on record in the budget, and not very much came out of it. As usual, a lot of rhetorical language, very little concrete on implementation. Some serious questions about areas of omission. No reference to the success or failure of the PLI scheme, which is taking so much money. She talked about foreign investment without acknowledging that investment has come down significantly. She talked, frankly, about a number of things that are couched in vague language like for confidence and hope and so on. But when it comes to hard figures, there were very few figures available. For example, she talked about foreign direct investment without acknowledging that it has come down as a percentage of GDP, not gone up. She talked about, she didn't talk about unemployment, which has gone up to record levels. She didn't talk about youth unemployment. She didn't talk about declining female labor participation when talking about Nari Shakti. So there were so many omissions. I must say that this is going to be a very, very disappointing speech in terms of being couched entirely in generalities and without enough substance, nor any willingness to address the specific problems of the economy.
Okay, I think we can all agree to one point that Shashi Tharoor is making, that there were no specifics that were forthcoming. Dr. Vandana Singh, Vijay Sardana is saying, look, don't go by the numbers. You have someone like a Manish Tiwari even questioning that 5.8% fiscal deficit, etc. Don't go by the numbers. This interim budget or any interim budget is about the political message that a government is sending. Now, according to you, as a citizen of this country, what political message has this budget speech sent you? And as Mr. Tharoor is right, one of the shortest in budget history.
Well, thank you for asking that question. I would actually agree here with Mr. Tharoor's observation also. And as I was already pointing out, very generic and not specific, really counting the milestones of last 10 years, what has been achieved till now, where we were then and where we are now. That comparison needn't be there, because as citizens, I think, as responsible citizens of India, we all understand where we were, how the progress has happened, how year on year, how we have walked forward. But I do feel as a citizen that we could have done much, much better on all fronts. And I do also know that it's easier said than done, and in the most populous country like ours. But at the end of the day, there should be more. What do you say? More substance in it, more ammunition in it, as I would say. There has to be more to really give the numbers, to give the specifics that okay, we are going to achieve this in this by this time and in this numbers. Now that was not there. So yes, it was definitely
Vijay Sardana,
the
what
last
was-
10 years. Sure, if I may say so.
Okay, Vijay Sardana, what about you? What has been the political message for you? Because you are telling us don't look at the numbers.
Because there are no numbers. Even if you look into the budget speech and the highlights, majority of the speech was on what was the trend in last 10 years. The concern is that, my
Correct.
concern is that even in some of the numbers which Government of India has given, the statistics is only up to 2022. For example, food grain production. They have not even shared the number what was the food grain production in 2023. Because one side we are saying agriculture production is going very well, then we are restricting the exports. So there is a contradiction, and even after restricting the exports, inflation is not under control. So there are a lot of things, and unfortunately this year Government of India deliberately has not issued the economic survey, which is in my view is a concern, because government must appreciate that you can only act as a catalyst. The actual growth comes from private sector and private sector investment. And unless you disclose where are the weak points, how a private capital can contribute to your efforts. So that is why I think there are many things which will emerge after the elections. Right now, by not releasing the economic survey and by not triggering the budget in this tax slabs and keeping most of the time silent on budget speech is basically playing safe game before elections. So that's why I'm saying there are too many things which are under the carpet, which will emerge only after election.
Madhavan Narayan, welcoming you to the show. Good afternoon. Before I come to you, should we quickly play the main highlights? Good afternoon. Should we quickly play the main highlights for our viewers just joining us? And then maybe I can come to you with a couple of questions. Let's quickly listen into Nirmala Sitharaman and the big highlights of the budget speech.
Over the last 10 years, the direct tax collections have more than trebled and the return filers swelled 2.4 times. I would like to assure the taxpayers that their contributions have been used wisely for the development of the country and welfare of its people. I appreciate the taxpayers for their continued support. The government has reduced and rationalized tax rates. Under the new tax scheme, there is now no tax liability for taxpayers with income up to 7 lakh rupees, up from 2.2 lakh rupees in the financial year 2013-14. The threshold for presumptive taxation for retail businesses was increased from 2 crores to 3 crores. Similarly, the threshold for professionals eligible for presumptive taxation was increased from 50 lakh rupees to 75 lakh rupees. Also, corporate tax rate was decreased from 30% to 22% for existing domestic companies and to 15% for certain new manufacturing companies. Honorable Speaker, sir, in the last 5 years, our focus has been to improve taxpayers' services. The age-old jurisdiction-based assessment system was transformed with the introduction of faceless assessment and appeal, thereby imparting greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Introduction of updated income tax returns, a new Form 26AS, and pre-filling of tax returns have made filing of tax returns simpler and easier. As for tax proposals, in keeping with the convention, I do not propose to make any changes relating to taxation and propose to retain the same tax rates for direct and indirect taxes, including import duties. Railways. 3 major railway corridor programs will be implemented. These are Energy, Mineral and Cement Corridor. Number 2, Port Connectivity Corridors. And number 3, High Traffic Density Corridors. The projects have been identified under the PM Gati Shakti for enabling multimodal connectivity. They will improve logistics efficiency and reduce cost. The resultant decongestion of the high traffic corridors will also help in improving operations of passenger trains, resulting in safety and higher travel speed for passengers. Together with dedicated freight corridors, these 3 economic corridor programs will accelerate our GDP growth and reduce logistic costs.
और भारत की इकॉनमी की साइज जितनी इस समय है, इसमें पूरी तरह से मैं आश्वस्त हूं इस इंटरिम बजट के कारण ही जो भी इंडिकेशन इस बजट से मिले हैं कि हमारी इकॉनमी जो आज दुनिया की टाइप 5 कंट्रीज में है उसकी साइज बढ़कर 2027 तक मोर देन $5 ट्रिलियन जाएगी और 2030 आते आते मोर देन $7 ट्रिलियन तक पहुंचेगी।
ये कहना चाहती एक शब्द में नहीं, a woman empowering the nation. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he always believed in that the country has to go forward with women leading the country. मुझे लगता है बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है, गरीब, किसान, युवा, महिला, हर किसी तबके को हम आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं विकसित भारत के लिए। और प्रधानमंत्री जी सिर्फ भारत को आगे नहीं बढ़ाए, विश्व में भारत को आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं और विश्व भारत को देख रहा है।
Of course, members of the government will build up the budget, Madhavan Narayan. But for you, I mean, how do you assess what Nirmala Sitharaman has presented to the floor of the House and to the rest of the country as well?
Let's take the first thing first. It's a vote on account ahead of elections. Therefore, I, for one, did not expect any either long speech or big proposals. So basically, the message in all this is see you in July. If there will be a fresh budget in July, whoever comes to power, including the BJP. Let's be very clear. I don't think that's the thing. Any other option I can see. Having said that, let's go into the details of the speech. However short it is, it was long on election vibes. So it was very clear that it was loaded with election demographic appeal. I call it a Maggie budget because nothing to do with noodles. It is MAGY, Mahila, Annadata, Garib and Yuva. So it's very clear that Mr. Modi is using these 4 categories to replace what BJP believes is the entitlement-based categories, which is the code word for caste or region. Okay. Now, this is the political messaging, and the rest of it was a detailing of whatever this MAGY, Maggie stands for in terms of various groups getting this and that. But let us look at the fine print. There are 3 aspects of this I would look at. First is macroeconomic growth. Second is welfare spending. And the third is implications for how good or how not so good this will be going forward. So let me take it all one by one. The fact is that Nirmala Sitharaman, who was wearing a fairly sober blue sari today, was presented what I would call a very colorful growth picture. which is basically because India is in a Goldilocks period as far as the economy is concerned. That's a blessing for Mr. Modi and Ms. Sitharaman, which is because inflation is at 5.7%, well below the acceptable band, but interest rates are high. The second, and in spite of that, there is growth around 6.5% or 7%, depending on who you're talking to and which forecast you're following. Inflation and tax revenue, especially tax buoyancy, especially on the GST side, has been so high that the government can A, actually spend money, B, claim tax revenues anticipated based on this money, and say that we are all doing excellently. So that way, and if you look at the infrastructure details, especially capital expenditure going up by 11% gross levels and 3.4% of the GDP, which basically means very good news for infrastructure and growth from a macro point of view for big business and people like that, infrastructure builders and stuff like that. But there is always a big question in an economy like India, particularly a populous economy, the world's most populous country, as to how much of that growth actually trickles down to people, how much of it translates as jobs, and how much of the welfare spending that is actually going to benefit people. Now, a lot of it sounds good on paper. I was particularly impressed by a statistic on the Mudra loans, which is 43 crore loans, Mudra loans have been disbursed. In a country of 150 crore, if 1/3 of the population gets loans from the bank, we should be actually already a developed country. I don't see that happening very easily. Even if you say 2 jobs per one loan, it would be actually 80 crore jobs. Do we see that? No. So anecdotally, and if you take a walk around Noida or Connaught Place or the malls these days, many shops are shut. I always like to relate the real economy to what I see and what I hear. So there are gaps in the economy, and we heard Dr. Tharoor say that. But unemployment, according to me, has been overestimated by the opposition. To that extent, the government is on a good wicket. And a lot of welfare schemes have participative character. Ayushman Bharat, and it's nice to hear terms like Asha workers, Anganwadi workers, and all that. But if you take away the Jan Dhan accounts, which are doing well, a lot of it is about participative growth, which means that you have to chip in some money for the government to actually help you, which means that we'll have to wait for the implementation details. One of the biggest flaws in this gaps right now is that we have no meaningful independent audit of the Labharti schemes on a large scale for us to know really what's happening on the ground. So we have to rely on some of the electoral outcomes. So last but not the least, let me put it this way. A lot of the growth gamble is based on loans, and especially Mudra loans or infrastructure loans, and even startups are going to be given interest-free loans with a long-term perspective. Any leveraged economy relying too much on loans may suddenly hit a road bump if the inflation shoots up, and farmers have not been getting their due prices for a while. Even the farmers' announcement in the budget was largely on infrastructure and feel-good things like logistics. We still need sufficient support prices. The doubling of the farmers' incomes hasn't happened. So all that means that if you take a realistic perspective on the economy, take away the election year hype and talk, we will still have to watch every step of the game. It shouldn't be like the India-England test match right now. They are lost after a lot of...
So two things, two takeaways from what you have said. What you have heard from the budget is see you in July. Number one, that we are here, we are not going anywhere, and we are coming with a full-scale budget. And number two, very importantly, you're telling me that there are gaps in the economy, and we've not heard about too many numbers, etc. We would have liked to have more details, but it is what it is. You're also telling me you didn't expect much in an interim budget. But I again take you back to 2019. We'll talk about that in just a bit. By the looks of it, see, 2019 was an interim budget as well. That was an election year as well. That was a vote on account as well. But the government was way more adventurous then than it is now. For example, the Kisan Nidhi Yojana, 6,000 rupees in every small and medium farmers' bank account every year. That came in 2019. That was a vote on account. So it's not like the government didn't have an opportunity to announce something big bang. They just decided to be conservative. According to Mr. Vijay Sardana, it's because they wanted to avoid any controversy. My point is this government is
I
not
have a
scared
point.
of controversy. Mr. Madhavan, give me a minute. I think, acha chaliye, boliye. Haan.
See, that's a very good question you're asking. Point is 2019, without Balakot, it's widely believed that Mr. Modi may not have won. So they had to take that gamble on some of the spending in 2019. Right now, the government seems to be much more confident. At the same time, we had COVID after that, and fiscal consolidation has been delayed for a very long time. And this time they've announced that the fiscal deficit will come down from 5.8% to 5.1%. So this was long overdue. So they decided to get weightage to that because the electoral chances don't seem to be affected by that.
Okay. Nitin Gadkari is speaking. Let's quickly listen into him.
हम वर्ल्ड स्टैंडर्ड के बनेंगे ऐसा मुझे विश्वास है। देश के विकास को गति देने वाला, रोजगार को बढ़ाने वाला और गांव गरीब मजदूर किसान के कल्याण की सोच रखने वाला ये बजट आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमन जी ने दिया है। मैं दोनों को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं और शुभेच्छाएं देता हूं। नमस्कार।
Okay, Shubhkamnaएं, and that's all we have from Mr. Nitin Gadkari, a very generic vanilla bite, as it were. Let me quickly go across and see if, if our reporters from Economic Times could join us. Sumit Chaturvedi and Sumita Karir. Are they through with us? If they are, I'd like... All right. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask our producers to patch them up from Bombay just to see how exactly the markets are doing. Actually, we do know how markets are doing. Mr. Sardana, you're seeing the... Is Mr. Sardana with us or is he on the phone? He's on the phone, I think. Mr. Sardana, hi. You're back. Not on the phone. All right. Hi, Mr. Sardana. You're looking at how the markets are doing. This is what? The markets... the interim budget was cautious. I think that's the one term that you can use for it. Are the markets being cautious as well? When you look at the picture on your screens?
That is what I'm saying. This budget is a status quo. They don't want to tamper with either in the political side, means a farmer agitation, or on the other side, the market upheaval. So they have taken a very cautious path because more you go into too much technicalities and announcements, different segments will have their own implications. So they have taken a very simple path. Even if you look into the announcement, as I was saying, that they were continue to focus on one is the infrastructure building, which no doubt any government which will come in power has to focus on how to improve the infrastructure, because huge country, still there are a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of delays, overloading infrastructure, which is hurting either trade or manufacturing. So that is one aspect, irrespective whether it is interim budget, BJP government or any government, that sector will continue. Second, today we all are talking about everybody is hooked to the digitization. Everybody is talking about mobile. So Government of India extensively focusing on IT infrastructure, IT development and telecom like 5G related systems and related derivatives, whether it is a robotics, whether it is a 5G economy, whole lot of those aspects. These were major push, if I say that where it is going to be. Third area where we have to look at, which is again irrespective of which party is there in the country, which is going to continue to focus on energy security. So these are three areas you can always consider, irrespective of who is in power, these sectors or these domains will continue to get focused. Controversial areas, agriculture, you have to avoid it. Tax structures, one has to avoid it. And anything which is related to, you have to take a harsh step, because if you have to focus on, there can be too much spending, but unless you tell how to accumulate the resources, it means how you are going to either remove the tax incentives or you bring the new taxes. That can be painful and which is not good in political economy when you are run up to the elections. So I think they have taken a very cautious view to continue what they were doing as a major investments, but at the same time, no controversies for common man so that there is no impact on budget.
Okay, I want to ask you two follow-up questions then, as we try and get reactions from FICCI and CII. A, why is agriculture controversial in an election year? 2019 was an election year and you had 6,000 rupees being given to every small and marginal farmer. If it wasn't controversial, then why is it controversial now? Also,
See,
given
it
the
is-
fact that a large chunk of this country is directly or indirectly related to agriculture, gets some sort of income or the other from agriculture. And secondly,
See-
do you agree with Mr. Madhavan Narayan when he says 2019 this government was not on such a sure footing, therefore you had the contributory pension scheme being announced, therefore you had the 6,000 rupees for every farmer being announced. Up there, sure. Opposition has done themselves, the opposition has done themselves no favors. The government is absolutely sure they are coming back. So they know we can afford to wait till July.
So there are two ways to look at it. In 2019, keep the Balasore out for the time being. See, at that time, it was just a second chance for the Modi government. And people were in this hope that, okay, we have seen the 5 years, they have done a good job, give them one more chance. So there was a sentiment which was positive. Obviously, opposition was making noise, but we know that noise does not convert into votes. That we have seen. Right now, the situation is after COVID, and then there was a farmers' protest. And there are a whole lot of controversies, whether truckers strike, farmers strike, different segments of strikes. Government has become very cautious now. They don't want to do anything because right now opposition is only in a mood to gear up the farmers or to the other sensitive groups against the government. So that is why they don't want to say anything. They have to be cautious for a simple reason because farmers' income, MSP issues, whole lot of farmers' agenda is still on table. If they announce something that we will increase the suppose instead of 6,000 to 12,000 or something, what people were saying under PM Samman Nidhi, the issue is where is the money? In fact, today, even if you look into the budget, whatever government's earning as a revenue collection, almost 41-42% goes as a interest payment on already taken the loan. So the play with the government is hardly 8 to 10% of the budget. Market borrowing is going up, which is putting more pressure. So there is very little play, even with the government. So they have to be very creative when it comes to, and that's what I'm saying. When you cannot please everyone, better keep silent.